over in Copenhagen. They're going to decide the heavyweight championship of Europe in just a moment. I'm delighted to welcome here to the studio Frank Bruno. Frank, thanks for coming in. You're set up to fight the winner. How do you feel this one's going to go between Tangstad and Eklund?
It could go the distance, or it could go short, you know, depending on how Steffen Tangstad comes out. If he comes out the way he did against Joe Bugner, it could be a short fight, but I hope it's going to be a long fight anyway, because I come a long way to watch it.
Who would you, difficult question for you perhaps, who would you fancy fighting?
Both of them really, but I prefer to fight Steffen Tangstad.
Right, not both at once, and even you aren't that good. Let's go over then to Copenhagen, and it's a lovely atmosphere building up. There's a lot of noise in that hall, I do know that, because I've had quite a lot of it down my ear in the last half an hour or so, and our commentators there are Jim Watt and Reg Guttridge.
So, you're quite right, Jim. It's almost like a Scandinavian Cup final here. 4,500. Really packed into the KB Hallen here in Copenhagen. And there's the champion, Steffen Tangstad, who's got a very big support coming from Norway, wearing their Viking hats. They've been jumping in the ring. He's 25, unbeaten, 23 fights, won 21 and drawn 2. And came in at 14 stone 10 pounds. There's Eklund, who came in at 16 stone 10 pounds. So a couple of stone advantage then for the Swedish challenger. And in many ways it's supposed to be neutral territory, because professional boxing is in fact banned in Norway and Sweden, although they both represented their countries in the amateur international events. And the referee, there he is, just calling them together now, Jess Anderson from Denmark. Scheduled then for 12 rounds, a European Championship. Jim Watt, Frank Bruno says he hopes it goes a long way there so that he can have a good look at them. A quick word from you?
Yeah, well, I hope it goes a long way too. I'm a bit worried about the weight difference. Eklund 2 stone heavier than Tangstad. That's something to worry about.
So there's quite a lot of tension now built up between these two. Certainly a couple of big lads, aren't they? You won't have any trouble, of course, only in the size with Eklund anyway, but he's in the black trunks. 6'6", Eklund. There was one time when we thought that fellas of that size were kind of freaks in boxing, the days of Primo Carnera. Eklund has the advantage of having beaten Tangstad as an amateur, stopped him in the 3rd round, but Tangstad has quite rightly said, I was only really fooling around at the game at that time. I didn't take amateur boxing seriously. And since then he had 15 fights in Chicago, so he came up through a fairly rough school. They don't do much betting here in Denmark, but unofficial betting boys have told me it's been more or less 6-5, take your pick. And I was surprised really that there were plenty of gamblers fancying Eklund to win, because surely unbeaten record of Tangstad was better. There's no love lost anyway between these two, that's for sure. A little bit of blood showing around Tangstad's right eye, Jim. Shame it's happened so early in the fight. I don't know how that happened, really. They didn't seem to get close enough for argument. Waving the Norwegian flag at ringside, but it's not doing a lot of good. That's about the best combination that Tangstad has thrown so far. Yes, it's showing now, Jim, a cut down by the right eye there. It's almost a horizontal-looking little nip. Actually, Eklund's boxing well, is using height and reach well to his advantage. Both these fellows boxed in England, of course. Eklund beaten by Noel Corliss, and Tangstad defeated Winstone Allen. It's a voluntary defence by the champion, and one wonders the wisdom of it in the opening round. Well, there's one thing, they've got the Irishman Paddy Byrne in Tangstad's corner. And, well, here the atmosphere was quite big. How is it with Frank Bruno in the studio? What's the verdict there, Frank? That
was a very quiet round. Steffen Tangstad always starts off slow and he builds his pace up, but I didn't know he could get cut so quick in the fight, Reg. But it seems an interesting fight, very interesting. Chess game sort of fight, Reg.
And there you see there that Paddy Byrne has been working on Tangstad's cut. There he is. Works in Barry McGuigan's corner as the cut man. He's one of the best in the game, really, and they'll need him there. That's why Steffen Tangstad employs him for that job. Jim?
And he's trying to use that advantage. He's
so just having a trouble now getting Jim. I think he's being drowned by all the noise there, Jim Watt, but we'll get him with you in a minute as we come out for the second round. And looked to me as though the left jabs of Eklund coming out just about won that opening round. I wouldn't have thought, Jim, that the amateur experience is going to be much good to Tangstad having fought Eklund. It's a whole different ball game, this.
Yeah, 12-round fight, totally different from any amateur fight. But Eklund has all the physical advantages, and at the moment he's trying to use them. He's trying to push Tangstad back. Tangstad has to ruffle him up a bit and get inside. That's a bit better from Tangstad there, but he can't stand off.
I'll tell you what, it's a long time since I've had better atmosphere than this. As I say, it's very much a local derby. The kind of England-Scotland game, this. Because in Denmark, there's a great following for these two fellas. Surprising, really, they come from neighbouring countries, but their pro boxing has been mainly in Denmark. Although, as I've said, Tangstad boxed quite a bit in America. He's very calm and collected, the challenger, I must say, for a fellow who really was on his backside in style against Noel Qualis. He's boxing quite well here. He did win in London. He beat Paddy Finn at Alexandra Palace. Eklund really picking off Tangstad quite well. The only thing is that Tangstad had the habit of coming into a fight a bit later, as he did with Joe Bugner. They both fought dear old Joe Bugner. Eklund lost the decision, although I thought he might have stolen it that night, and Tangstad won it, perhaps a little bit luckily. There's one thing, whoever Frank Bruno fights here, he won't have to go looking for them, Jim.
Well, I think either of these opponents would suit Frank, because they're both pretty set on their feet. They're not fancy Dans. Eklund, probably with his head a bit higher, would suit Bruno a little bit better. Tangstad's a little bit tighter, crouches down a little bit. But I expect Tangstad to come into the fight more as it goes on.
Then, and there's been some heavy chants there for Lillen, which I understand is translated as tiny, the nickname for Eklund. The judges, incidentally, come from Denmark and Finland. Lud Jensen and Pariti Ruutunainen. I remember him, he fought Floyd Robertson in Glasgow. He fought Dick McTaggart as an amateur. Finally, Tangstad got through with a decent-looking left hook. Eklund looking so calm all the time that it's about time the champion rattled him a bit.
Yeah, well, Tangstad has landed a couple of good right hands, couple of left hooks, but it hasn't shaken Eklund at all. Eklund's looking pretty confident, pretty cool. He's looking far better than the last time I saw him against Corliss. I'm surprised. He's a lot better fighter than I gave him credit for.
I think Tangstad supporters being a little bit drowned here at the moment by the Swedes. Ingemar Johansson, the last Scandinavian over 20 years ago to own the European Championship, is here. And he's been very much with Steffen Tangstad from Norway, not from Sweden, which of course was Ingo's country. Wondering how much really that Eklund can use that 2-stone advantage. Half a minute to go then in the third. Dropped a punch, the crowd knew that, and so did Tangstad. I think he's rather pleased to hear that bell too at the end of the third, Tangstad, although he's very rarely on the deck, if at all. Well, again, the atmosphere just tremendous here. Frank Bruno, update us, please, with your version.
It's a very interesting fight. Eklund surprising me, you know what I mean? Because when I saw him against Noel Corliss, you know, he didn't look too hot then, but now he's looking very, very hot, and he's taking the fight to Tangstad now, and he's backing him up, and it's looking a very good fight, Reg, you know, very good fight. Still a chess match sort of fight, but Eklund's getting in front all the time. I thought Tangstad would have started warming into the fight now, but it seems like he's not.
And that's how we feel about it at ringside. Jim Watt and I, actually, Frank, we're both surprised.
Right.
If the statistics matter, he's had 13 fights and won 10, Eklund, with 1 draw. And over there in Eklund's, Tangstad's corner, I should say, they're really laying into him a bit with the verbals as we come out then for round 4. Well, Tangstad giving away the advantage at the moment of being champion, and if this keeps up, Jim, he's got a good chance of blowing the title in a voluntary defence to against, let's face it, a Swedish lad who wasn't even in the top 10 rankings.
Yeah, it's possible Tangstad looked on this as an easy match, but he couldn't have been further from the truth. He will have to back Eklund up, because if he lets Eklund push him back, they'll never get into the fight. Eklund has all the advantages, as I said already. Tangstad has to push him back, get under his jab, and try to score to the head, but he's not managed to do that so far.
Certainly Big Frank was right. This fellow's boxing better than we imagined he could, and he's been very useful with the left hand. You'd have thought he may have been shell-shocked after the Corliss fight, but hasn't shown it yet.
Well, when I saw him against Corliss, and I heard he was boxing for the European title, I said there's going to be trouble here. That must be a mismatch. But as I said, I'm pleasantly surprised. It's a far better fight than... obviously, you can't look good when knocked out in the first round, but it didn't seem to have any talent at all that night. Oh, good shot!
Well, that has got to be the turn-up of all time, because Tangstad has always had the durable chin. He's getting the mandatory standing 8 count under European rules by the Danish referee, and he is in trouble in the 4th round. Really, it looks as though this big guy's literally coming from nowhere and tagging Tangstad. He's got all the heart in the world, Tangstad, but he's going to need it. And he clobbered him on the way down then. Gets a second standing 8 count now. Oh, on the right hand, and he stopped it as he hits the floor. And it's a madhouse in that ring now. Well, that really is, in boxing terms, one of the upsets of many years, this one. Nobody really, there were people here who did fancy Eklund, but the experts, as they call them, and I have to say that includes myself and Jim, we thought Tangstad might be a bit too strong for him, even though he had to concede a lot of weight. But this guy, this big guy from Sweden, who's now taking over as Ingemar Johansson, the 2nd champion from Sweden to hold the European title. He was upset that Johansson didn't think he could win. Let's have a look at the replay now, Jim.
Yeah, well, from the first punch that knocked Tangstad over, he seemed to lose interest. There it was. I think the right hand did the damage, the left hook pushed him over. But from that point on, he seemed to lose all interest in the fight. He got up and he looked over to his corner more than the opponent. See, he walks away. When an opponent gets off the floor, he should immediately look towards the opponent if he's still thinking about his business. But there he goes. He seems to have lost all interest in the fight this early. Very, very strange. I think maybe he's found himself in a far more difficult situation than he had anticipated before the fight. But it wasn't a lucky punch. And when Eklund saw his chance, full credit to him, he went after it. Most of the punches were catching Tangstad high in the head, but the ones that landed were doing the damage. Here he goes again. Another good punch knocking him back. Tangstad tried to punch back a bit here, but even now his attitude seems to be lacking. He still doesn't seem to have got his head back into the fight. Eklund didn't leave him alone, just kept banging away at him, and quite soon another right hand high in the head puts him over again. I think at this point the fight was over as far as anybody was concerned. But again, Tangstad gets up, looks the wrong way, looks to his corner as though to say, get me out of here, I'm fed up with this for a caper. But the referee has a good look at his eyes, waves him on for the 3rd time, but the writing's on the wall at this time. Look how calm Eklund is, no problem at all, and he goes for the finish. Bang, straight away, and the fight's all over. 3 knockdowns, and the fight's all over. I think everybody must be surprised. Eklund was cool all the way through, as though he expected to win the fight. He surprised me, he surprised Reggie, he surprised everybody. But that's a tremendous performance, a tremendous upset. But still, a tremendous performance. He was never overawed at any time. Nice and steady all the way through. He worked the jab for the first few rounds. At no time, even when Tangstad come back at him with punches, he was never upset. He just kept his boxing, he stuck to his boxing. He caught Tangstad with a good right hand just towards the end of the previous round. I think that gave him the confidence, he had the power to hurt Tangstad. Then, I think maybe hopefully Reggie may have a chance to speak to Eklund now. Yeah, here he is.
Well, Anders Eklund, a surprise winner to some people, obviously not to you. If I can reach up to you, congratulations. Frank Bruno is your next challenger. What do you think about fighting him now?
Well, Bruno is a very good fighter. He's strong, but I think I had a good chance to win.
You boxed so well. Did you really fancy your chances, confident as you looked in there tonight?
Yeah, I was very calm tonight. I was very calm because I know that I could beat him. So,
but you've seen Bruno a few times. Do you think you can beat him too?
Yeah, I think so. But he's a very good fighter, so it's going to be a good fight.
Where do you think the fight will take place?
Well, I hope it's here. Or in Sweden, I hope.
Well, if they can lift the ban, maybe now they will, now that you're European champion.
Yeah, maybe. I hope so.
Once again, congratulations.
Thank you.
Very good victory.
Thank you.
Okay then, Frank. Well, incredible fight that, and an incredible turn-up,
Shock,
really.
yeah, shock.
I mean, Anders Eklund really gripped the fight early on. Never looked like losing it. Let's just have a look at the deciding moments again, and you give us really your version of this. I mean, Eklund has put on a terrific performance, and